So, today on Rising Up by Asia Startup Network, we have Elise, co-founder of Asia Startup Network and Director of Communications and Community at Vertex Ventures, Southeast Asia and India. Elise has been championing meaningful community initiatives for years in Singapore's startup ecosystem. In this episode, she elaborated on how Asia Startup Network was started, how her childhood shaped who she is and how she works today, and the importance of giving back to those in need. I'm a big fan of Elise's work, and I'm sure you will love it too. I'm your host, Yu, and check this out.
How are you today, Elise? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling a bit tired because I just recovered from flu, but otherwise good. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. I mean, you're very excited and very grateful to have you here in this virtual studio to do our recording. So tell us more about yourself, of what you do, what you're up to.
Sure. So I'm Elise Tan, and in my day job, I lead communication and community at Vertex Ventures, Southeast Asia and India, which is an early stage fund that is agnostic. We invest into many different sectors. So we invested previously into Grab and into unicorn companies such as Nyam, PetSnap, and so on. We particularly like tech businesses that are scalable and are built by quality founders. So outside of work, I run a Mentor for Home, Makan for Hope, which are initiative by the Asia Startup Network. So actually, Jie is our volunteer. So thanks to volunteers like Jie Andrew and I have been able to run this initiative since 2020. What we do is that we aim to bring together the startup, tech, VC community so that people can support each other through their startup journeys and then be able to give back as well. Yeah. So we give back through various way. It can be in terms of knowledge and skills or even donations for charity. In 2019, I also gave birth to a girl. So I'm also a mother of one.
Well, I actually got to know you through the different initiatives that you have been leading throughout the years. So like Makan for Hope, Mentor for Hope, because at that point in time, I was looking for projects to get involved. And I was super amazed by the scale of the initiatives and the impact that it was able to generate, in the startup ecosystem as well as the beneficiaries that you are working with. And I'm super curious, like how did all these get started?
And before I answer that, thank you for leaving messages on our website. And I'm surprised I wasn't tracking the messages on the website. And finally, you got us, you emailed. So thanks for persevering. If not, we wouldn't be here today. So how Mentor for Hope get started in 2020? So actually, I was in between jobs. I just left Entrepreneur First, which is a accelerator and VC for deep tech companies. That time I was just watching the news. So I remember distinctly that I saw a news headline saying that the pandemic is taking its toll on large companies. And then because I have been in accelerators and incubators previously, so I guess my first instinct was that would the smaller companies, startups, be even more affected because of the access to less resources? Because I have been investor relations, so I thought, why don't I rally people from the network and ask them if they would like to mentor the founders for free? Because we never know, we could open doors to funding, customer, and other opportunities. So I just went to email, I think the list of over 1,000 to 2,000 contacts. And one day I actually had 60 yeses. So I thought, we just get started, literally with pen and paper. So that time I was just matching startups who got to know about the initiative on Excel spreadsheet. And then I thought, maybe I need more help. So I went to email my alum, which is in the NUS Overseas College. Then people like Janet New turn up. So with her as well as other volunteers, and then Andrew Tan as well, who is now my co-founder, they basically turn it into a larger campaign. So we call it Mentor for Hope because there's a mentoring part where it's supported by nearly 300 VCs, ecosystem partners, accelerator incubators who mentor for free. And then we also have around 200 startups from across Southeast Asia who sign up to be mentored. We have a lot of other things going on like master classes, but the key thing, we managed to clock 525 hours of mentoring in 1.5 months. And I think that is quite phenomenal. Like, the kind of efforts, the kind of energy that we had in wanting to support each other through the crisis. Yeah, so volunteers like Tibor, Janet, Andrew, we always, think about the times where it has been so, I don't know, it was impossible, but we made it possible because of the kind of, I don't know, willingness to help, the energy and all that. It was really incredible. In 2021 and 2022, we name it as Makan for Hope, mainly because we could, I mean, for most of the time, we could meet up in person. And then we also know that during the pandemic, the F&B, businesses were badly hit as well. So we intentionally chose some of the social enterprises in F&B to be venues where we gather so that we'll be able to increase the amount of benefits that we could bring about to our community at large. Yeah. So it brings us to where we are today, and really without people like Janet, Andrew, yourself, and other volunteers, I don't think this is possible. Yeah. So thank you to everyone.
Yeah, I think that's super impressive. Even until today, in 2023, we are in this virtual studio recording this podcast as part of the Asia Startup Network, Makan for Home, Mental for Home initiatives. I think, at least to me, there are many ways to drive impact. There are many ways to give back to the society or whatnot in different capacity. And in fact, many people are doing this, but you actually take even a big step forward by coordinating different partners together, by driving everyone towards the same directions. And that's an impressive load of effort and also thoughts into it. So I wonder, what's the biggest motivation behind you to drive all these initiatives?
I think number one, the motivation is because of gratitude. So in 2020, in fact, we call it Gratitude Mentor for Hope. And why gratitude? Because I think, especially for me, I feel that I've been very blessed throughout my life. And this allows me to get to where I am today. I wouldn't say that I am like a success yet, but I do appreciate, all the mentors, whether they are formal or informal, who have appeared in my life and then giving me a kind of leg up. So I think that it is also I'm already mid-30s, and it's time for me to give back as well. Then secondly, I'm also motivated and inspired by people around me, especially Andrew Tan, especially you yourself and other volunteers, as well as the other ecosystem partners who are so willing to give. I think when there is this, like-minded individuals who are kind of acting as your accountability coach in a way, you just keep going despite what happens that get thrown in your path. Yeah. And then thirdly, I think this is also an important point, is that I see myself at a crossroad of different stakeholders, because I have been incubator, accelerator, so I have always been working with founders. But at the same time, I have also the network of investors and other ecosystem supporters. So I guess I'm just in this unique position, right? And for me to be a bridge between both sides is actually much easier than someone who has been always on the investor side, or somebody who has always been on the founder side. So I guess I see this, me not playing my part as maybe even something not responsible. Yeah. So I just feel that I need to do this.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting, because this is an additional layer of work on top of what you're already doing in Vertex. And I'm really inspired by your spirit of really driving change and giving back. So I think here I want to hear a little bit more about how's like for you growing up, because you mentioned that throughout your journeys you have received help, guidance from different mentors, formally, informally, and that kind of shapes who you are today. And I wonder, so how is it like growing up for Elise? And did the younger Elise envision herself to be, who she is today? So tell us more about, how's it like when you're younger, how's it like growing up?
Yeah, I come from a middle lower income family. So I think growing up, we have to make a lot of trade-offs. So I think, while it is unfortunate, but it also made me more resourceful. So for me, I think inevitably I've been trained from young, with little resources. Then how do I capitalize on it? And of course, the other part, which could be a, I don't know, naughty trait of mine, is how do I game the system? When you are stuck in that situation, it puts you a lot into a survival mode. Yeah. And I think after I started working, much of the time, sometimes I spend unlearning some of this. Like how do I, so because like, especially at Vertex right now, we do have resources. So I actually don't need to save so much. And, yeah. And how do I actually change my mindset to invest instead? So yeah, so this is actually quite funny, but it's really something that came out of my childhood. My parents are blue collar workers, and they have never been to university. They are super grateful that I've been able to made it to university as well as my sister. I would say that the challenge of this is that I think that oftentimes I lack a mentor to guide me, to show me the way, because I seen my friends who have parents who are more highly qualified in their career, and they do kind of leave a blueprint for them. So that I think for me, I kind of scramble around and somehow end up here. So I mentioned about gratitude because I think somehow, I will meet people who give me maybe honest feedback, or someone who was a figure of inspiration to me. And that helps me so much. So I think I must, when I mention mentor for hope, I should also mention about Janet, because Janet, she is a few years my senior, and she's definitely an informal mentor because she has shown me the way on, how do you be excellent in everything that you do. And she's super smart as well. And I think, just being in her presence and seeing what she does help me to understand, what are the standards that I need to attain. So I think this is super helpful. Yeah. I will remember that my parents, because of, I guess, lack of education, we are actually quite bad with financial management. So I remember when I was young, there was a time where we literally didn't have money in the bank for dinner. So my father basically have, I think, maybe $20 left on his credit card. And at the time, it was probably in the 1990s. The only place that accepts credit card was like Pizza Hut and Pizza Hut, I think. So we had a pizza for dinner. I think I never thought my family was, penniless in a way, but the whole incident made me realize that we definitely need to manage our financial resources better, and that, you know, we basically need to be more prudent.
Thanks for sharing. And I guess many people know you as the, connector in the startup ecosystem. And looking at the profile, you went to great schools, you have achieved like quite a bit of results throughout your career. And yeah, I mean, hearing what you just said, it's really inspiring how you manage very unique situations that arise in your childhood, and you manage to navigate that, and also through the helps or guidance of people who show up in your life, and here you are, you are this person now who's also a role model for a lot of people, who are looking up to you.
But I would say that I'm still in the stage of growth. Because I don't know whether it's a female thing, but I feel very uncomfortable when people say that, hey, you're successful now. Because I think even Andrew as well, we don't see ourselves as successful and all that, but we do know that we have the responsibility as role models. If not for our teammates, it will be for our children. Because I mean, for me, I have a 3.5, and then he has a newborn. So is with our child that we realize, they are watching our every move. We have to be on our best.
Right. I guess one thing I want to find out here, what you've got to say, was also about what you just shared about, younger days experience, because I'm not sure who can relate out there. For me, I think growing up, it's always challenging when you see what your peers have and what you don't have, whether it's about academic results, resources, network, or even for girls, like appearance. And it's always challenging to navigate, peer pressure or comparison and all of that. So I wonder if you actually struggle with that, or like do you have similar experience, or how did you actually navigate that?
Yeah, I think actually one of my most meaningful class from my MBA at INSEAD is organizational behavior class. So one of the things that our professor mentioned is comparison make us unhappy. And he went on to give the example that if you put yourself in let's say you are looking for a house and you live in a very high class neighborhood, you will definitely feel more miserable compared to if you were to stay in an average neighborhood, because the thing is humans always compare. It is inevitable, and I think we always talk about survival of the fittest. So inherently, we will compare with other people, so that we kind of tell ourselves, "Hey, we we are a stronger survivor." Yeah. So I think growing up, I really is impossible not to compare, but I think I also reached a stage where I know there are certain things that I will never have. So when I was in Raffles Girls' School, I remember going to my friend's house. So her chauffeur brought us there in a Jaguar. So at the time, Jaguar was a huge thing because there are only a few Jaguars in Singapore. And then when I reached her home, I saw in the restroom, there is this. I just remember so clearly. There's a bathroom with two gold taps. So I was like, oh my gosh, I never even seen this before. And I, I know then that obviously my family will never reach that level. Because my parents are blue collar workers. Yeah, and I think at the time, even though I'm in secondary school, I kind of um realize that there are some things that I can change and some things that I can't. But it's okay. I'll just know that where are the levers I have, where the leverage I can have, so that I can continue to grow with the means that I can access to. So I think comparing is inevitable, and secondly is knowing what you have. Where you are is another thing, and then I think thirdly is that maybe it's a good thing that I had access to less resources, because even now when we look at startups, we always talk about how in 2021 it's an exuberant period where all the valuation was sky high, and startups that needed only 10 million end up raising 100 million. And what happened is that they will find a way to spend it. But what happened is that it becomes so inefficient in a way that they will build the businesses and it become unsustainable. So yeah, maybe it's a blessing in disguise that I started with less, because then that made me realize how I can be creative and resourceful, and kind of force that out of me.
Thanks for sharing that. When I was hearing what you were just sharing, I wish I heard this when I was way younger. Well, especially when it comes to this, comparing yourself and peers and all of that. So I guess in this front, I know that you were enrolled in this NUS Overseas College when you were in university. And also you have been in the startup ecosystem for quite a long period of time. So I'm just curious, what was one of the most memorable entrepreneurial undertaking that you had, especially early in your life before you even started working?
Sure. I don't know if anyone has seen my profile. I started with studying chemical engineering in NUS. And to be honest, I didn't like what I was studying. So the NUS Overseas College program was actually the highlight of my 4 years education, because when I was there, I realized that I basically step into a lifestyle where it matches my personality. It helps me to connect with other like-minded people, and I simply love it. It was also then that I started trying out with kind of starting my own business. So that was in, I think, 2008. So it sounds like a long time ago. And blog shops were the rage. So I realized that I was living pretty near a factory outlet, which is in Atlantic City. And the best thing is that I can get there for free because Atlantic City has a casino as well. So they basically bribe you, to go there by providing free transport as well as credits. So I realized I could start a blog shop to help people to buy branded bags from Coach, for example, and other brands that were not available to Singaporeans at the time. So, for example, you can buy brands like Gap, Forever 21. And I mean, now all these brands are here, right? So it didn't make a difference. But back then, people wanted to buy these brands. And I helped to facilitate that. So it was super interesting because in the, I guess, 50 weeks that I was in US, in Philadelphia, I shipped like 22 parcels to Singapore. But this is interesting because it kind of give me the lens into what constitute good customer service. How do you retain customers? How do you do marketing? How do you reach customers so that they know about your services, your products? I think the whole experience transformed me. I always remember my internship boss said this to me. So it was, I think, Black Friday or something. So there was parcel coming through the door every hour. Then my friends were just in the company, they were just stacking the parcel up, and the parcel ended up, being taller than me. Like my boss was asking me, "Are you doing drugs?" But I'm so fortunate that he is so encouraging of the entrepreneurial spirit, despite my moonlighting.
I think that's interesting, and it's probably a little fun memory that you had when you were in the US. And well, I guess on top of that, I think I also like to touch on, because when you were in the US, your main goal was probably there was a study component, if I'm not wrong, with the program, and there's this internship component that you have to kind of fulfill also. And on top of that, you're also doing this little project on the side. And I think it's quite a bit of things, to juggle in your hand altogether. I guess we also see that this continue with you, and even until now. So you're working on a full-time job, you're leading different initiatives, and you also have a daughter, to take care of. I wonder, if you allow me to ask, like, how do you manage all of these, and do you not get burnt out at some point?
I guess I always got very close to the burnout limit. But I guess is knowing my boundaries, and then whenever I feel like I'm reaching the limit, I will take a break. And I would say that it's not easy because when we were younger, we always think that we are invincible, that we can always recover and bounce back. But now that I'm in my 30s, I realize that no, our body really need that rest. And if I don't rest, it's either my body, fall sick, or it will always have a way of making it up, right? So I have to be disciplined about that. So I think to answer your question, I guess I am juggling a lot, but at the same time, I am also not. So I'm very selective about what I do. So for example, somebody who is reaching out to me on something that is non-startup or investment related, then my natural answer is no. So I am actually quite focused on just really serving this segment. And secondly, over the years as well, I think I spent about 1/3 of my life in this industry. I realized there are ways to scale what I do, processes and system to deal with, everything. This comes with having been through certain painful periods and learning the hard way. So I would say nothing is impossible, but in whatever I do, I always ask myself why, what is the reason behind doing it? And if it's not for myself, then what is the value that I'm bringing for others? Yeah. One of my informal mentor taught me, she was the chief sustainability officer at CapitaLand. So she taught me that always try to stack benefits, in as much benefits as you can in one thing that you do. So it looks like you're doing a lot of things, but actually not. You're using one stone to kill like a few birds. Yeah, I think this also connects with the background that I come from, right? So how do you fully utilize limited resources to bring about the maximum output? And then secondly is having passion in whatever you do, because I would say that, what makes me get out of bed every day, what makes me feel excited is really the things that I choose to do. And if you keep following that, every day seems like a non-work day. It just seems like you are in the flow.
I would like to touch on a little bit more on the why aspect, because I think, well, especially when we were younger, it's easier for us to aim at one goal and go for it and hit it, and you move on. It's you always know that there's some form of rewards waiting for you, and you don't really need that many whys to drive you forward. But then I think, especially when you step into the working life, things are a little bit vague. Sometimes the things that you do, you don't really see the instant reward or instant gratification. And more often than not, especially in the startup world, you don't know how long that you have to continue grinding before you actually see the rewards coming up. So I wonder, especially like because you are, apart from work, you are also doing all these non-profit work, pro bono work. Like, how do you maintain that level of energy, the motivation and drive to, continue with your work or, this additional endeavors? Because apart from the normal burnout that we usually talk about, like you are juggling a lot of things at once, but I think there's also another layer, which is that, oh, you are working on this, but why are you doing this? And like, what's the reward you are striving for? And how do you actually continue with that? So I would like to hear a little bit more about what you think.
Yeah, I would say that I'm inspired by what my previous podcast guest mentioned. So he's Joseph Pua. He was the founder of Paktor, one of the early dating apps. So I also asked him, what keeps him going and how does he know that he was in the right direction? So he told me candidly that he didn't know. He just know that every day he is solving problems and that he is feeling energized and encouraged by what he does and how others benefit from the things that he create. And I realized that the same apply to me, right? How do I keep my energy up? How do I continue doing what I do? I think firstly is actually I don't really know whether at the end of the day what is this leading me to, but I know that I mentioned earlier that in this unique crossroads where I know that I'm able to be a connector and I do see synergies between different parties. Yeah, I mean, I could close my eye and not do anything, but I guess all of us are born with this conscience, and it's difficult to just see something that, is as good as seeing somebody needing help and you know that you could just spare that minute to help the person. I think that's part of what keeps me going. And then, and yeah, it's really hard to say. I guess another way to explain this is there's this concept that one of our partners he shared before is the ikigai. So when you are at a really cross junction of your personality, what you like to do, and then what you can do, which is the value that you add, and something that you offer something that the world needs. When you operate in that zone, you really feel that you just get inspirations and you attract people who actually have a similar mission and vision. Yeah, and I don't know how to explain it, but it's a wonderful thing, and that keeps me going. I think the last part is really you cannot give what you don't have. So I realized that it's so important to really take a break, rest, and really make sure that I'm fuel myself, because if I am not in a good shape, I have low energy, negative vibes, I'm not in a position to help anyone. I'm not in a position to be a good contributor or value adder.
I think throughout this conversation, we have learned a lot about you, especially in the aspect of, developing different strategy to cope with, different challenges that you have faced throughout the years, when you were younger, even growing up or even until now. I'm curious, is there anything that you're still struggling with and you're still, trying to find solutions to cope with?
Yeah, I am definitely struggling with a lot of things. I think a lot of us could have underestimated how much impact our childhood have on us. Yeah, so I think one thing is definitely insecurity. I don't know whether it's a female thing or it's also because of my childhood. There will be times where I feel, am I doing enough? Am I good enough? Am I on the right track? So I think this comes to me quite often. And of course, over time, I know how to manage this better and also question myself, because often this could be just irrational thoughts that comes to us. So I think is learning how to cope with it. I think the other thing is, I asked many of you to try out the saboteurs assessment. So for myself, my saboteurs are clearly people pleaser and hyperachiever. So I guess, people pleaser is a good thing and bad thing. So the good thing is that I am able to sense, people, even if they don't say what is on their mind. Yeah. But the bad thing is that when I do things, I care so much about what other people think. Really, it takes a lot of unlearning and a lot of being in the present in order to ignore that, really stopping that whole people pleaser saboteur whenever it comes up. Then the other thing is hyperachiever, and you actually asked me, why do I do a lot of things and all that. So I think I have been, for much of my life, have been measuring myself based on the number of achievements that I have. And I think this is really could be a product of our Singapore education system, that we measure ourselves against what we have done, how well do we do it. We are literally still scoring ourselves, even though like for me, I have graduated since 2009, right? So really, counseling myself, being aware and countering it with positive thoughts so that I'll be able to, kind of reinforce this. I think there's a lot that I'm still going through. And I think the other thing is, I guess it's better now, but mental health is really stigmatized in this part of the world. For myself, I have tried counseling, I've tried psychiatry, psychologists, especially when I was going through my postpartum depression. I think it's so helpful to have a professional to help guide you, to help you, kind of unravel the messy thoughts you have. Yeah, I highly recommend everyone to try it. Yeah, at least for a certain part of their life, so that they realize, they are not alone, and things can always work out for the best.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. So, any words? Well, imagine you are having a conversation with a 16-year-old or 17-year-old Elise. Any words that you would like to share with this 16-year-old Elise?
Yeah, I thought, it's important for us to give takeaways for the audience that we hope to reach, which are maybe youth from disadvantaged background. So I mean, if I were sharing this with someone younger or even my younger self, I would say that firstly, there's no perfect path to success, and success, is really a moving target. Is and different. All of us should have different definitions of success. And then secondly, is really, really being aware of ourselves, know ourselves. It sounds very cliche, there's lots of proverbs and all that say so, but it is true, when we know our strengths, when we know our gaps, that's where we can be proactive, we can action to make ourselves a better person every day. And then thirdly is, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to seek mentorship from anyone. So I think part of my survival skills is being thick skin and just knock on the door of different people, because we often think that, oh, people are too busy to help us, people, they don't bother with us. But the thing is, people are often more kind and generous than you imagine. Yeah. And I have encountered it numerous times when I run mentor for Hope and Makan for Hope. There are so many people who are so passionate, who are so brilliant yet so humble and ready to give back. So have your own, assemble your own suite of informal and formal mentors, because it really help you to cut short the time to learn something, to learn about industry, or really to achieve your goals.
Right. Yeah, that's really nice to hear. Again, thanks for sharing that. So, well, I know that when we first started ideating this podcast, we were searching for different names and whatnot. And now we've settled with this name called Rising Up. And apparently, well, when we shared it with team members, a lot of people liked it. So, I guess a question for you: what do you associate personally with this term, rising up?
Yeah, when you proposed the title Rising Up, I really like it, because in my mind I could see, like water evaporating from a container, and you can see that the water vapor is going to, basically they are made out of water molecules, and they are, you know, going through many different paths to reach the atmosphere, where they will become gases, right? So I think in the same vein, um, all of us, we have a different path, to reaching our destiny, or to realizing what is maybe the plan that our creator have for us. So in a process, it's not going to be a straight path. It's going to be meandering. It's going to be have some collision with other water molecules and all that. Even exchanging kinetic energy. Yeah, but the thing is that we will get there if we allow ourselves to. Yeah, so I think the writing up is so interesting, so meaningful.
Thanks for that. I mean, I think different people has different interpretation with the terms rising up. And it's, to me, it's simple, beautiful, and it just sums up a lot of aspects, of the work that we are trying to do here. So that's great. And I think we are at the end of this episode. So thanks, Elise, for your sharing, and we are so grateful to have you here.
Thank you so much, Jie. I really enjoy our conversation.
Thanks for listening to Rising Up by Asia Startup Network. If you stay to the end, please give Rising Up a follow on Spotify, YouTube, or whatever platform that you listen to this on. We loved it, and thank you from the bottom of our heart for your kind gesture of paying this forward. You can also find Asia Startup Network on LinkedIn, where we regularly keep our community posted on anything exciting, relevant, and helpful to the Asia startup ecosystem. And we'll see you again very soon.